Okay, I'm going to do some rigging. I'm going to rig this rigging with controls and then exporting it to Unreal Engine. I'm going to rig this character up here. Not going to skin it today and create some controls. I'm going to use my method of doing it. Once again, it's more about establishing a workflow and something I can I can use going forward. So let's see, I'm going to apply it to the other characters. It's not going to be a complex rig for now, so I've done this before previously, but let's see how it goes. I'm going to drop the texture off here. I'm going to start by breaking up the character meshes a little bit differently. Just renaming that element more correctly. Dear, right. Alright, start with a group. Just create a group for the eyes. So I want to keep the naming convention of the mesh here for the group. So I'll just call that the Fisher Eye group. I'm going to put the teeth in their own layer. And that's pretty much it. So I've just broken up grouped the geometry a bit better here, a bit differently. And I'm going to start creating some controls, well, joints rather, and then I'll be attaching some controls to those joints to more easily facilitate animation later. Okay. For the fish, I'll be creating a spine running down the length of the fish, and then the root will be around about the just behind the head, to allow the head to also move separately. And then the fins, I also want the eyes to be rigged, of course, and then the jaw, upper and lower jaw. Okay, let's see. I'm going to swap over to my skeleton creation here. I want to make sure projected centering is on, although I'll be changing that. I'll be changing the positioning of the joints anyway. And I'll go to a top view. The side view is also good for this, but I prefer the top view for the spine. I'm going to start just behind the head and then move down. Using the X key here to snap to the center. Probably want it just behind the fins here. I think that's okay. One round about the middle there, one by the tip of the tail, and one just by the end of the tail. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's okay. This one might be a little close together, but that's alright. And then I want to start naming them. I prefer this naming convention. M for middle, and then this is going to be tail, and this will be the tail or the fin tip or whatever. I'm first going to create some the skeleton here, rig it up, and then I'll do the orientation a bit later. Just gonna position it a bit differently, a bit more higher. Okay, now I'm gonna do the head. I'm gonna start the head in a separate hierarchy, and then I'll connect them up a little bit later. Okay, let's see. And now I want to do the jaws. So the head's just going to have that one joint there. And then the jaw. I'm going to do the jaw from the side, and then I'll position it back to the center. I'm going to try and get the jaw a little bit lower for the lower jaw. Something like that. And then I'll create another one for the upper jaw. Around about here. Normally your upper jaw is not going to move around that much, but you never know. Now I want to position these and make sure that they're snapped to the center. I'll do the orientation in a second. I'm just going to hide the geo for 1 second. See, the eye here is still a little bit lost. And then let's get to the naming convention. So this is going to be the lower jaw. And that'll be its tip. It's going to be the upper jaw. And the tip. And then I need to fix their hierarchy. I want them parented to the head. So I'm just going to parent them to the head. So if I were to move the head, the jaw would move along. That's what I want. And now I'm going to start doing let's do the left side first. I can delete non-deformer here. I could delete history as well. I do not want rotation on these joints at all. All their initial rotations must be 0. Okay, let's do the eye. Do the left side first. Try and get it to the center of the eye. I have to use my isometric views here. I think that's okay. Okay. Adjusting them later won't be such a huge problem. I'm going to try and reuse these rigs anyway, once I've created a rig. I'll be able to export it to the other fishes and just do some adjustments. I could script this up and create some locators and then create joints according to the locators, but I'm not going to do that for these simple rigs. I'm not going to overcomplicate these rigs because I'm also learning things as I go along with the Maya Unreal Engine workflow. So I want to try and keep things simple, as simple as I can. So this is going to be the left eye joint. It's going to be parented to the head. I haven't done the orientation yet, which I'll get to in a second, to make sure that my joints are oriented the way that I want them or expect them to be. I'd like to do the fins first, so, or the arms. They don't really have arms, they have fins, I guess. Let's get a save in here. I'm going to start them in a new hierarchy. I still haven't connected the head to the spine. For games, typically I would, for characters, only have one root spine and not do multiples. So I haven't even tried working with multiple root spines. I don't even know if that's possible for a single character. And this guy is right. Okay. Let's do the arm, the fin. I want to start round about here. And then just move down the fin. Let's see what that looks like. Don't like the position of this one here. I'm going to move them up a bit. Try and straighten them out as much as I can. Maybe a bit more center. Haven't done the orientation yet. I'll get to that in 1 second. Orientation is really crucial. Also want to make sure I have no rotation. I'm just going to put the geo layer so I can't select it on reference. Okay. Do the naming convention that I prefer. I should really be calling these fins, but I like to call it an arm. This will be one joint for the upper arm, one joint for the lower arm. I'm not going to be creating shoulders. Shoulder joints, don't need them. Could argue I would need them to simulate breathing, especially around the gills, but I'm going to try and rather do that with blend shapes, which I'm going to try and do next week. I first need to do some research and test some stuff with Unreal and see how that's going to work for what I want to do. Now currently this rig is a little bit broken. Too many roots. I have 1, 2, 3 here, so I need to organize the hierarchy. The head I want connected to the root joint directly, which is this M spine 1. So I'm just going to pop them in there. And then let's see, what do we have here? This guy I also want going, the upper arm I also want going to the root. I do not want my upper arm rotating with the head, like you would with a you would have with the humanoid characters. You usually have the arms rotating along with the shoulders. Now in my case I don't have shoulders, I'm not going to do shoulder rotation, so I'm just connecting directly to my root here. Now I think it's time to do the orientation, so just want to double check I have no rotation issues here, no rotation set on any of these bones. Alright. Okay, I'm gonna drop the geo for just a second here. And just focus on the bones. I want to just show my grid just to make sure I'm oriented. I've got some orientation to look at. That's not the geometry. Okay, so the way I do this, I'm just going to select the entire hierarchy here, and I'm going to use my orient joints function here. I'm going to say I want my X to point to the next child joint, and then let the rest sort themselves out. Let's see what happens. And I'm just going to switch on local rotation axes. Okay, cool. Looks like it worked. Except for these tip joints, they always do weird stuff. So for them, I don't usually skin to the tip joints anyway, so that's fine. I just use this orient joint to world function on them, and that should be fine. Except I'm not loving that orientation it's got there. Let's check these. I'm also not loving this orientation here. I don't like that. So I'm just going to fix that. It's not hard to fix. And that did it. That is exactly what I want. I want these joints to face towards each other, like that, and to be flat. I don't want them to have a funny angle. Let's see. And this is exactly what I want here. I want this to be flat. So if I select the head, and then I have if I were to use my normal script that I have here to connect up a control, which we're going to do in 1 second, this rotation is not set to world, it's set to object. So it's going to follow the orientation of the bone, and I want this to be oriented like this, which is more planar to the world axis, because it's going to make it easier for me to move the head, to animate the head a little bit more naturally. I don't want this going off in a funny angle. Also for the eyes, the same thing. It's just the one eye here. I want them to be planar, more planar like this to the world axis. But you definitely want these pointing toward the next child. So that's fine. I want those red ones pointing towards the child bones. Okay, now I need to do some mirroring. Let's get the geometry back for a second. Just delete non-deformer, save, take a look, get rid of the grid. Now I'm going to mirror this guy and the eyes as well. When I mirror these, I have some options. Normally for a humanoid, I guess you choose behavior. What that does is, if you were to rotate these in unison, I don't need to select the entire hierarchy, but if you were to rotate these, they move in opposite. That would be awesome, except I'm going to be hooking up a control directly to this orientation here, and I want them to match. So when I select both of them and I do this, it's not going to do what I want. I don't really want this flapping behavior. I can get that with a control or a custom attribute on the channel box if I want that, which I'll probably end up doing anyway. So I'm not going to choose this option. I'm going to use the other guy, orientation, and I'm making sure to replace my variables there, so I have the right names, and this should just work. So now if I select these two and rotate, they should do the same thing, and that's actually what I want for my control scheme. But this orientation is wrong here. It's not pointing toward the child, so I need to fix that. Let's see if I can fix that. and just hit this last guy. Also, to mirror these poses are actually quite simple. You can just write a Python script to mirror a pose. It's not hard. I probably need to do that anyway. I do have some scripts here to help me with that, which I've written before. So let's get rid of these. Just make 100% sure I don't see any weird bones doing something I don't expect, or joints having an orientation I don't want. For the eye, I don't want the X to point down here. Obviously, like I said, I want that planar to the world axis. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. I didn't do the other eye, so let's do that quick. Just gonna mirror this guy. See what happens. Okay, and I'm just gonna hit him with a ruled orient. Yeah, nothing happened. Good. That's what I wanted. If I were to select both of the eyes, I should do that, yes. So if I have rotation on the one eye, I want the same rotation applied to the other eye. That's going to be useful if I'm going to start trying to do look at in Unreal Engine, because I'm not going to hook this up with IK. I'm going to try and rotate the bones to find the look at rotation for the bone in game using just hopefully some basic math functions. If I can't do it in the blueprint, I'll hopefully be able to do it in C++. We'll see. I'll need to play with that a little bit. Now, typically I like to test these rigs before I go too far with it, so it would be a good idea to just quickly skin this up and just export it and import it to Unreal Engine and just make sure that it works. Now, because I have done that before, I'm not going to do it now. I want to get onto the controls. Do the controls for this guy and then get it into Unreal Engine and just make sure with a quick skinning. I'm not going to do a detailed paint weights and all that now. Just make sure that it works, which is very important. You have to keep on testing this stuff in the game engine. Just want to hide the local rotation axes. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Delete non-deformer. Give me a new save. Okay. The way I like to do controls is I'm going to use some NURBS shapes. I just want to test a few things quickly. Just make sure I don't have any weird yeah, I want those to move like that. That's fine. Okay, just want to double check I have no rotation anywhere. Okay, so let's get on to creating some controls. I'm going to do a torus, NURBS torus. Don't know how much love the NURBS torus gets, but it's probably not a lot. Just going to rotate this guy 90 degrees. Don't love this radius. I'm going to just knock this down. Be really thin. I'm going to be scaling this up anyway. And I'm going to start the controls at the fin here. I guess the tail. Okay. And I want to do the orientation immediately of the controls. And these I call controls, so let's do that. Create a group. Just gonna call this my control group. Make sure I have a layer for my controls, so I can easily control layer, so I can easily hide them so they don't get in the way. I'll fix that up in a second. How they look, it's not going to look like this. Let's do the orientation. I want this orientation to match my joint. So I've got X pointing back, Y pointing towards me, and Z pointing down. So let's do the group. X back, center, let's just double check that again. Red must be pointing back, blue down. Red back would be 90 degrees this way, and then blue down would be 180 this way, I guess. Let's see. Is that too much? Alright, I think that's right. I rotated the wrong one. I always do that. The rotation mustn't be on the must be on the group. Okay. Let's do that again. Red back, blue down in the group, 90 this way, and blue down should be just 90 down this way. I'm holding J in to do that. So red back, Z down, and Y towards me. Z down, Y towards me, I think that's right. Once I've done that, I can now orient the shape here where I want it to be control wise, and if I freeze the transformations now, it matches. Red back, Z down, Y towards me. Red back, Z down, Y towards me. That's what I want. Let's get a control material on here, something I like. I use yellow for the middle. I'll call this my middle control material. It's going to go bright yellow and just knock the transparency way down. Something like that. And then I don't like this, the way that it looks, so I'm going to do the normal, just drop my non-deformer, get a new save, and just start shaping this a little bit more the way I like it. And once I have this guy, I'm going to just position my controls for the rest of the character. Or where I think I would need controls. Don't want it that thick. One more there. Something like that. It's a little too thick. Don't want it that thick. Not crazy about this one, but it's okay. It's fine. As long as I can get hold of it, that's what's important. Let's freeze the transformations on these guys. Get them named correctly. This is going to be my spine 3 control, and this will probably be spine 2 control. I don't mind if they have translation values because that has to do with the parent, but all of their orientations will be the same as the joints, which is very important because I'm going to hook them up in a second using the same way or method I showed last time. Okay, let's do the fins. That a little thicker. Maybe something like that, maybe a little thicker more. Just move it back a bit. Rotate it a bit out. Okay. And then I'll need one more. Let's just fix the color scheme here. I want my left side controls to be I'll go for probably red. Just drop the transparency down and swap it to blue for the other side. Now normally when you're animating, obviously you're not going to be seeing the skeleton, so you're going to be working with stuff more or less like this. Okay, I need to fix the name. My left upper arm control, I'm going to need one more. I haven't fixed his transformations yet. Get to that in a second. Just gonna make sure he's a bit more over there. Well, I'll take that. Maybe just bring the transparency down a little bit for the red. Okay. Zero this out. And that's not what I wanted. There you go. Okay. Alright. They don't have to be looking the same, they just need to be oriented the same. Red back, Z down, Y towards me for the connect attribute and that stuff to work. Then I won't have to put in math nodes and things like that in between, which would make this a little bit more complicated and have to do some fancy footwork in the node editor, which I'm trying to avoid. Just because. Okay, this is a good start. This is not the right name for my control. This needs to be called something else. Let's see. This is supposed to be called the lower arm control. Now notice I'm not parenting or creating a hierarchy of my controls. I want them all to be flat. That's just how I prefer it. I'm going to be creating parent constraints on these to their respective joints anyway, and ignoring the rotation for a specific reason, like I showed in the previous video, but I'll just explain it again quickly when I do it. I want to mirror this over to the other side. As always, there's more than one way you do this. You can do this. I have a way that I like to do this. I just want to make sure that I have my ducks in a row here. Delete the non-defaulter history and just save in case it goes wrong. Okay. I'm going to do them one at a time because it's just easier. So let's start. I'm going to duplicate this guy, and I'm just going to rename him to the R upper arm. I'm going to see which values here I need to change to get him to the other side. That's not the one. That's not the one. Let's see. That is the one. Now we just need to do the rotation. If that's the Y, I think I can try this one. Okay, cool. He's right. Now he's going to probably give me the same behavior that I had earlier. Oh, okay, they're matching. But I don't like these negative values here. I want to get rid of that. Excuse me. It's really simple to get rid of that. you just freeze the transformation again. You get a little message here, and that's it. It's gone. It's done. Works fine. And we'll see when I hook this up if I did this right or wrong. So Z goes negative as I bring this out this way, and Z goes negative as I bring it out this way, which is what I wanted. Perfect. Let's do this guy quickly. I think this is going to go a little faster. So I'm going to duplicate him. He's going to become my right lower arm control. I should be able to just negate the Y axis, the Y scale, and just freeze, and I can just ignore that message there. Why? Because I know. Okay, cool. Now we have controls. They're not going to be red. I prefer to have my controls on that side a different color. So this is my right control material, and that's going to be in blue. Just knock the transparency down a bit. I guess knock the transparency up. Something like that. And now it's time to just hook these up quickly. I'm just going to hook these up, do a simple smooth bind, and then test it to Unreal before I go too crazy with anything else, because it's important that this needs to work. Always test in the game engine you're developing for. You don't want to spend hours doing stuff that you know should work, but then you do it and you find you have to go back to the drawing board and do a whole bunch of work over again, which happens more often than not. Okay, so to hook these up are really simple. I've got a script here that I wrote in Python. It's just going to connect the attributes up, connects the rotation from the object that you selected first, and then to the object that you selected second. And then it also creates a parent constraint, ignoring the rotation to the same object that you selected second. So let's see what happens. I also have the script here that does the opposite. It just disconnects that attribute and removes the parent constraint that it finds. If you were to or wanted to undo this operation, you could just hit the undo and it's gone. So I'm just gonna hit that guy. Now they're connected, so as I move this control here, it moves. And it also has a bit of an offset now because it's also translating along because of the parent constraint. That's what I want. And if I select him in the joint again and hit this guy, those connections are severed. So it's a good fast way to test and to work. Now what this allows me to do, if I select this control, those guys move along, which is what I want. They look a little bit funny because they're not orienting, and that's fine. I don't need them to orient. I just need them to follow along so I can get a hold of them. That's more important to me than anything else. As long as I can get a hold of them. Alright, the fins. Connect them up, test. Right, and same on this side. Select the control, the joint, and then hit the script. Easy peasy. So normally when you're going to be animating this, these skeletons not going to be visible. Let's just get the skeleton into its own little group. So when I'm skinning this up, I don't want to see that. I'm going to call it the Eccleton skeleton group. Alright, so this is typically what you probably would be working with, something like this. Also need a lot more controls. Well, not a lot more. I'm going to create some more controls here. I want some controls for the head. Now it's very important to hit non-deformer history delete. If you hit this other guy, bad things can happen. So the minute you start adding in constraints. Right. So I'm going to take you and just duplicate you. When I duplicate this guy, because he has a parent constraint, that parent constraint actually also gets duplicated, which I don't want. But he doesn't rotate the spine or the joint, he's not connected in any way. Okay, so he's going to become my head control. Want it a little bit thicker. Something like that. Maybe just a little higher. And this has to be called the same as my head control. Head joint rather. And it's important that I freeze the transformation here on this guy and just hook him up to the head. I'm just going to select the head from the list. That should do it. Awesome. Okay, time to test to Unreal Engine. One thing I didn't check was the behavior if I move the arms. Yeah, that's what I want. I do want them to move together. Normally you wouldn't. For mirrored behavior you'd want them to move in a flapping like motion, but I don't want that. Because it's easier with this control setup not to do that. if I want that flapping behavior, like for gusting forward or gushing forward or whatever, I would just create a little control in the channel box, which I'll probably get to sometime. I'm just going to test skin this up real quick with a smooth bind, export it to Unreal Engine, import it rather, and just make sure that it didn't break or doesn't break. I'm not going to add any animations or anything like that. That'll come later. Well, that'll come when I start skinning it up, because I'll probably create a test animation that just makes sure all the joints move on their own and whatever, to make skinning easier. Right. So for this it should be simple. I should just be able to select the group of the mesh, which contains all the geometry, and the root spine, and then just do a smooth bind on that. See what happens. So if I grab my controls now, they should move. It's obviously going to look like complete poo because I haven't skinned it. I'm just using the default settings here, which I would never recommend for production, Microsoft. Okay, cool. So it's working as I expected. I want to export this to Unreal Engine, and then that will be it. So to do that, first delete non-deformer, save, just give it another quick test. I haven't tested the jaw. I haven't even created controls for the jaw. So obviously they're gonna do weird stuff. Like I said, you don't want to do too much work before testing it in the engine. Getting the jaw to work will look cool. Even adding controls to the jaw could be a little time consuming. If you had a problem right now, I'd rather know about it now before waiting to get to a couple hours in and then having issues in Unreal Engine. So I'm going to select the geometry, doesn't matter which order obviously, geometry and the spine, root spine, hit export, and this is just exporting as an FBX. I'm just going to call this, here's the little test rig 3, I'm just going to call it that. It's fine. I'm not exporting animation and I'm not baking animation, but it's going to include the skin. I'm obviously not doing blend shapes here either. Hit that with an export, see what happens. I'm going to get an error because you can't export these constraints, they don't work in Unreal Engine. That's fine. Went over that in the last video. So here's my test FBX3. I'm just gonna test rig 3, bring that into a test folder here and just see what happens. I don't want to overwrite or touch any of these characters that are already in game. I just want to test that my stuff here is working. I'm going to choose import animations, even though I know there are none. I'm going to choose import mesh, skedaddle mesh, and just create a skeleton. It'll create materials as well. So just hit import, see what happens. I'm expecting a rig, skedaddle mesh with no animation, and a whole bunch of materials that it imported from Maya, which I'm just going to discard in 2 seconds. Awesome. Just compiling the shaders. Oh, I mean, I could open it up now, I don't have to wait for it. I might prefer to wait. Just let the shaders compile. It takes few seconds. Almost done. Yeah, normally I wouldn't test with the materials from Maya because it's irrelevant. I'll be replacing them with substance anyway, and I'd be wanting to update these characters in here. So let's see if I just open this mesh. Just look for anything that doesn't look right. Obviously it's not the best character ever. Let's check out the skeleton, see what it brought in. Okay, we want to see the orientation. I'm not sure if this is just the default world orientation. And you can see the bone there. So it's imported my skeleton. And awesome, that's what I wanted. There's no morph targets here, that's it. I'm happy. See, I don't need this, so I'm happy this worked. So I'm going to be working on the rest of the controls, and then I'm probably going to start skinning it up this weekend. And then, so there's going to be a lot of that in the next couple of weeks. Probably a lot of repetition and stuff like that. Alright. And I think that's it. Thanks for watching.